Writing a good story is hard. Making a good movie is hard. Transforming one into the other is even harder. Welcome to Adaptive Difficulty. This is a show where a couple of book lovers take on the challenge of adaptations. I'm Cameron, and with my friend Josh, we explore the difficult and sometimes bizarre choices that happen in the course of making an adaptation. This week, we are exploring the 1988 film Who Framed Roger Rabbit, based on the 1981 novel Who Censored Roger Rabbit.
Hello, I'm Josh.
And I'm Cameron.
And I guess like always, let's start on this with what is your prior experience with any form of Roger Rabbit?
I watched the movie quite often as a child. I really liked it. It's one of those few movies. It's like that and Looney Tunes Back in Action that are like the only two movies that I really think of when I think of live action alongside Toon characters. So they really kind of stick out in my mind.
Yeah, I had seen bits and pieces of the movie. I'm not 100% sure whether I had watched it beginning to end until I watched it for this episode of the podcast. But I had a strong cultural knowledge of it because people, especially Jessica Rabbit, gets referred to a lot.
We can talk about Jessica Rabbit in a moment.
Pop culture.
It's just, like, when I was watching it, it's amazing how much I remember of this film, because I really kind of remember basically every moment, like, just in the order it does happen. And it just happens, it feels like the movie was longer when I was a child, which is probably just kind of a prospect of being a child and time seeming slower at that point. But it just,
yeah,
all the moments happen, they just feel like they happened a lot quicker in the movie than I recall.
Right. Yeah. That, I kind of agree with, like, I feel like again, seeing bits and pieces of it, it felt like there were so many, like, distinct parts of the movie, even if I didn't see them in order. Like, it goes through a lot of different settings and moods.
Like, I feel like we were, I feel like I have a memory of us being in Toontown for much longer than we actually were.
That part I had, like, almost no memory of. So I guess I just never happened to catch it when it was at, like, rerunning on TV or whatever. I think it's really funny that Looney Tunes Back in Action is the other example you have of this phenomenon when Space Jam exists.
Yeah, but I never liked Space Jam. Also, Jessica Rabbit beats out Lola Bunny every time.
But there's not a single sexy rabbit-named character in Looney Tunes Back in Action.
Bugs Bunny. I mean, he's right there.
That's true.
When he nibbles on that carrot, your heart just goes out of your chest.
But as far as, I mean, I would have what I would say is either probably a negative knowledge of the book that Who Framed Roger Rabbit was based on as a kid. Like, I think this is one of those movies where the fact that it's based on a book, like, doesn't even factor into the conversations about it.
Until I actually,
it's like it.
I think you suggested this, right? Where and to be honest, I kind of knew that the book was there, but, like, it had only been, like, recently revealed to me in, like, the past, like, 2 years that it was based on a book at all.
Yeah. So that is the perfect segue to what did you think of the book?
My tagline is, it's bright, but better.
Bright, like the
yeah
racist orc noir?
Yeah.
Yeah, I see it. Like, Toons are orcs, are black people.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's kind of like every minority, because, like, there's lines about them, like, coming from China to build the transcontinental railroad, so they're, you know.
Yeah.
It does make me think, because, like, this is the kind of same thing that happens in Bright, where, like, there's no consideration for how this world would actually work if Toons, like, or these people, these magical elements just existed. Because they talk about World War II existing, and just the concept of Toons existing at the same time as the Holocaust just doesn't sit right with me.
Yeah. I'm not going to delve into any of the Toon possibilities of that.
I mean, I just bring it up because
it's like
it's just one of those things where I'm like, Gary Wolfe did not decide, he's gonna sit down,
especially because, like, if you follow the logic of this book, like, Toons were the victims of every mass atrocity pretty much in human history.
Yeah. But I feel like it works better than in Bright, simply because, like, I don't know, there's something inherently more absurd and distant about making them Toon characters, where, like, it's easier to kind of compartmentalize just a little bit. Whereas I think when in Bright, it's just, like, so aggressively, like, in your face about race.
Yeah, I haven't seen Bright, so I only know it, I guess, because you have mentioned it before, really, is the main knowledge I have of it. I think Bright is sort of earnest about the metaphor and trying to be, like, socially aware.
Mm-hmm.
Is that an accurate statement, even if it's ham-handed?
Yeah, it's one of those things where every line in that movie is some writer who thinks that they had the biggest brain.
Yeah. Well, there was one writer, and he did think he had the biggest brain.
Mm-hmm.
But Who Framed Roger Rabbit Who Censored Roger Rabbit, sorry, is the name of the book. I think to its credit and to its detriment in different times, I don't think it really is all that interested in being, like, a sensitive parallel. Like, at times it's even an offensive parallel, and it feels like maybe that's the author's take on things.
As I was reading this, I was going through kind of the same thing that you were going through what you're describing, where I couldn't decide, and, you know, based on this time period when it was written, I'm very much like, it's probably not meant to be that deep, but I couldn't decide if we are supposed to accept Eddie just kind of at face value and just kind of agree with him, or if we're supposed to kind of see the way he treats all Toons, also a little bit of all women, and kind of, like, disagree with him and kind of see his hypocrisy and kind of see and sympathize with the Toon characters who are kind of second-class citizens.
I think there's a little bit of both, because, and this is true in the movie too, probably to an even greater degree, Eddie's arc in the book is going from, like, I don't work for Toons, you know, I don't really care about their matters, to, you know, sticking his neck out in the end to ultimately save Roger and Jessica Rabbit from like being imprisoned forever. So there is some character growth in, like, seeing the Toons as having a humanity that's worth sacrificing some of himself for. But at the same time, there's just, like, I guess my conflict was, is it because this is what, like, a noir style detective might be like, because it's also a noir parody, and, you know, they wouldn't be perfectly, you know, PC, or is it just, like, again, the author leaking through? Especially the main line that comes to mind is when he's like, you know, Toons keep moving into my neighborhood. They call that societal progress, like, very, like, sarcastically.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know, that whole sequence to me felt like, okay, we're supposed to, this is Eddie's character, this is who he is. He probably is, you know, racist, and at the end he's probably still racist because he still makes these comments, but he's probably moved forward to a degree in progress. But I just couldn't ever decide if we, the audience, are supposed to be like, shut up, Eddie, or we're supposed to, like, cheer him on when he says stuff like this.
Yeah. And then there's another scene later on. It's very throwaway, but, like, one of the characters is, like, he's a pornographer, basically. Like, he made, like, the equivalent of the person who shoots Playboy, but for cartoons, named Sid Sleaze. And there's just a scene where, like, Eddie walks in on him cross-dressing, and it's just like, oh, what a sicko that he cross-dresses, and then, like, they kind of move past it.
I mean,
so it felt like that was played for laughs by the author pretty directly.
Well, so, like,
but also that would have been a less cogent societal issue at the time, I guess.
It's one of those things where, like, when I was reading this, when I was particularly that scene, I was thinking of, like, Lindsay Ellis's video about the history of, like, transphobia in film and media. And I was just like, this is another one of those examples where, like, it's, you know, it's A, to kind of show their deceit, and also B, to kind of gross out the reader and Eddie just by the whole prospect of it. And it's one of those things that I think is just a product of its time.
Right. And again, to be extra charitable to the novel, it is also completely believable as, like, something that would be in a throwaway scene of a noir investigation.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so, but yeah, overall, I thought it was, just taking it as a whole book and kind of disregarding that conversation, it's enjoyable to read. I think it has a little bit of that syndrome. I think every book that deliberately tries to be funny, I think it's just hard to write a novel that doesn't sometimes come across as trying way too hard if you're trying to be funny.
Which,
but
I mean,
it also has enough,
I think works a little bit for Eddie's characters. I think there's moments when Eddie's trying to be funny that it's supposed to come off as he's trying too hard. As compared to, like, the natural
And
Toons.
it has, again, it's able to fall back on, most of the lines are written as if they're like the narration of a noir movie.
Mm-hmm.
And those do use completely absurd metaphors and stuff and the voice is pretty consistent. I think it does a good job at sounding like that. And some of the lines are funny. And I think the Toon concept of, like, living in a world that's half Toon, half human, and, like, Toons are actors and celebrities, and I think it's very creative, and a lot of what ends up on the screen with that concept in the movie is in the book, and it's funny in the book too. So that's my overall conclusion, I think, on the novel. I think the underlying mystery is not, well, you can, what did you have first before we move on to that?
I completely forgot at this point. We'll talk about the mystery while we'll see if it comes back to my mind. But, like, I thought the mystery
I was just going to say, I think fine.
I mean, I thought it was fine. Like, it wasn't, like, super engaging. And this is, like, one of the few mystery novels that I've actually read. Like, I don't, like, it's not really kind of the thing that I focus on.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much is going past me, considering the fact that it's supposed to be a parody of all these kind of things, particularly noir books and films. But I was engaged with trying to figure out who it was. And I think there's enough, like, misdirections that you could see yourself falling down as you're reading to kind of piece it together and then realize, oh, you kind of missed it the whole time, kind of thing. Like, like the whole twist at the end of,
and before I think obviously anyone who listens to this is comfortable with spoilers. I'm not going to reveal the ultimate finale of the mystery in this book. I think that's a step too far, since I would assume most people have not read. Okay.
Yeah. I was just going to talk about the Dominic brothers and, like, their twist.
Yeah.
And the twist for them is that they're actually Toon characters who became human for various reasons. And it's one of those things that when I was reading this the very first time and I was listening to them describe who they were whenever he first met them, I was like, I couldn't decide if this was going to set up a point where he's, like, actively describing human characters as if they were, like, Toons, like, in kind of this kind of silly, kind of cartoony way. And I think that holds a little bit there because the human characters have a lot more, like, personality. I think that, like, Carol Masters, when he first meets her, kind of looks kind of weird and has this kind of grandiose thing. Whereas I think when he describes Roger Rabbit or even Jessica Rabbit to a degree, he gets a lot less, like, it's a lot more bare and a lot less, like, cartoony in description.
Yeah, I think that's just showing that he is in the human world himself and pays more attention to it than he does to Toons. So that, I agree.
So I was a little primed for when the twist does happen that they were actually Toons all along. I was like, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, I had just, I guess, missed their introduction or, like, the exact I guess he always specifies if the character is Toon, but not necessarily if they're human. So in my head, I was trying to think of, like, who is this character a match to in the movie? Because I hadn't seen the movie in quite a while, so I didn't like remember anyone's name. And so in my head, I just thought they were the match for the weasels that I remembered from the movie. So I was like,
well, I think he never really,
but
mentions them being human. And I think for a little bit I was confused because of just how he describes them. I was like, okay, are these Toon people? Because it doesn't really make sense with the rest of the world that they're like capable of doing this, since like they're clearly, Toons are supposed to be second class citizens. They're not supposed to have high paying jobs. They're kind of supposed to be there to kind of be commodities for other people. But
right. But going back to the mystery itself, again, not revealing the solution, but I do think the solution to me, and this is one of those things where like you can rate a mystery on like how well can you solve it while you're reading. I think it's a little unfair. I think it breaks, like, obviously this is a world where cartoons exist, so there's some suspension of disbelief, but I think the final solution goes a little bit beyond the logic that you can derive from the fact that cartoons exist, so
it's one of those things.
It would be hard to solve on your own, or maybe impossible.
I mean, I feel like what specifically you're talking about, and we can cut around this.
The tea kettle that for most of the story acts as a MacGuffin.
Okay. I didn't know if you meant that or if you meant the thing in the final chapter about who murdered Rocco. Not Rocco. Yes, Rocco.
I'm not sure I even remembered. I was talking, and this I'll definitely edit out, specifically the fact that like
also
doesn't show up in the story until like the last 20 pages.
There's a throwaway line where Persia does not exist anymore. Shame.
Well, that's true. It's Iran now.
I know. It's just... And then there's a line, he's like, who makes the rugs?
Yeah, there's a lot of commentary on... Well, not a lot. There's a modicum of commentary on corporatization.
Which I think makes sense.
Yeah. And then I feel like we've already talked more about the book on its own than we usually do with these, but I think that makes sense because I feel like this is one where us and a lot of the audience are coming from it from a perspective of being very familiar with the cultural impact of the movie and not the book.
And they are substantially different.
Yeah, so I almost think we should cover what was, and we've have to some degree, what was surprising about the book coming from it already knowing the movie.
I mean, to me, the most surprising thing was just kind of how bleak and unlikable like Eddie is in the book, simply because of his like casual racism and casual sexism, where again, it's the matter of like, am I supposed to take this at face value? Am I supposed to kind of see past this? Because there's moments where he almost feels like he's trying to be better and the society around him doesn't want him to. And it kind of ties into a little bit kind of what I think about the movie, but we can talk about that later. But just kind of how much more pervasive and upfront the kind of double citizenship nature of Toons in the book is than I think in the movie. Because I feel like in the movie it's a lot less, like it's there, but it's a lot more mild and toned down.
Yeah, in the movie, there's a brief mention to like a humans only bar, like that's where Jessica Rabbit performs, and obviously the main character has his own reasons for currently being biased against Toons, but it's definitely more of, it's almost like, I mean, like, to give the book some credit, the book is more realistic in that like society itself is structured against Toons.
And this is why I say the book is bright but better, where in the sense that it's like it's the societal forces that are kind of working on it. Whereas I feel like in the movie it comes down to a lot of like personal forces and people have to overcome their personal
It's much more the like Hollywood racism of, if we can get this one main character to get over his phobia, or hatred, that's an improvement, or
it's the Oscar bait model.
So we're already pushing it too far because we make it sound like, if you hadn't watched Who Framed Roger Rabbit and you listen to us talk about it, you would think you're like sitting down to watch Green Book, but about cartoons.
I mean, there's
is
a
not
car.
true.
There's a car.
And there's there's a human and a toon in it.
Let's see. It's really a mixture of Driving Miss Daisy and the Green Book, I think. That's the tagline of Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
It's also interesting. The cartoons in the book they speak by speech bubble. And the impression I got is that they're not even audible unless you can read the speech bubble.
Well, that's one of those things that, like, I liked at first, but as it went on, it felt like, I don't know, it stopped being a fun aspect of the world to me.
It got tiresome for it to have to be described every single time a Toon spoke.
Well, and like things like Jessica Rabbit doesn't use that. She just speaks because she's a humanoid Toon. So really there's like 3 classes of citizens where you're a humanoid Toon, or what they call a barnyard Toon, which has all kinds of implications.
Right. But even then, Jessica Rabbit would have spoken thought bubbles or speech bubbles, but humanoid Toons train themselves out of it so that they can land different jobs and roles and things. So it's not just like it's not some biological.
Because I have to imagine that, like, the pornography that she was doing would be a lot less impactful if you had to read a speech bubble to get it.
Yeah, and that's the other shocker, I guess, of the book is, of course, in the movie, they play patty cake rather than even have sex. But in the book, Jessica Rabbit just, like, straight up in her younger years did porn.
Yeah. Which makes sense. I can't believe that book predicted Rule 34 of the movie that it's based off of.
Yeah, that is crazy. I had some thought before that, and then you mentioned Jessica Rabbit porn. And,
Sorry.
And now I'm off of it.
I know that gets you off base, Josh, but I had to mention it. The people have to know.
Something about speech bubbles.
I mean, I liked how the speech bubbles had like when he goes in first and finds Roger Rabbit's body, and he finds a speech bubble underneath it where it kind of like they can tell the time of death based on how long the speech bubble's been around. I thought that was cool. It's one of those things that's like, oh, that's an interesting fact that like makes sense in the context of like a detective novel, but also makes sense in the context of like there are Toons that exist.
Yeah, and I thought it was fun to like physically have Roger Rabbit, who is the murder victim in the book, have his final words, which is like the classic, like even in Citizen Kane, the like classic final clue. But like they literally have his exact final words in the book and can like carry them around, which is fun.
Oh, we didn't even talk about like the big difference with the duplicates.
Oh yeah. Each character, each Toon, the logic of the book is that Toons can like use their mental force to create doppelgangers, which they call doppels of themselves. And those are the ones that like go through the anguish of dying in cartoons. Like whenever you see cartoons die and then they survive, that's because the Toon had made a mental double of itself.
It's like weirdly existential, like especially with Roger's doppelganger, who survives the original Roger's murder and is like part of the reason why Eddie is, he's the one who hires Eddie to find out who did it. And it's just like this weird existential beat where he's like, yeah, I'm going to disappear and disintegrate in like 2 days. Well, you have to find my murderer before then. And it's just kind of, I don't know. It's more unnerving than like having like a death sentence in a movie or whatever.
Yeah. And the movie just changes it to like cartoons can't be murdered except by the dip,
I love the dip.
And I think that makes sense because I think it's just, it works in the book fine. I don't have a problem with it, but I think it would just be too much to get into in the runtime of a movie.
Yeah. Well, especially with like the speed at which they go around to different things, I'd be like, okay, where are you going to sit down and explain this?
Right. And since they make it less of a mystery movie And so when they really like distill down the mystery element, I just don't think there's enough time or reason to spend on that aspect.
It's not even really that much of a mystery movie because, like, I feel like we never really...
It's fairly obvious who did it from the first time they're introduced.
Yeah.
But
who doesn't
technically,
love,
the
who
characters
doesn't love a
don't
scary
know
old
they're
man?
looking into it. Technically, for the characters, they're investigating unsolved crime.
Because they're blind, they cannot see the evil old man in all black with wind blowing this cape around when they first introduce him. As if this is not screaming, "This is Jafar, please kill him now."
And again, because of the nature of how much we knew about the book versus movie, I think we've covered a lot already, but I think I'm ready to just go in order through the movie, if you are.
I think I'm also ready to go on to the movie.
So my first note, I like the cartoon opening.
Mm-hmm. So did you like it when Roger got inflated big and round?
Well, that ranks lower on my list of reasons why. But it is definitely one of them. No.
It's just like, it's been such a long time since I've seen like that style of cartoon where the whole point is it is just slapstick. Like, I know I was supposed to think about it for any longer.
Yeah. As a loyal fan of theatrical exhibition, I saw The Day the Earth Blew Up, a Looney Tunes movie on Tuesday. So some of us are keeping the faith, but others
some of us were trying to recover from a massive trip we went on where we were responsible for a bunch of 13-year-olds.
It's not even like, I think the cartoon itself is fun and, it's hand-drawn animation, which, anymore, like you're saying, is cool to see at this point. But I just think it's a clever introduction to the world where they cut it and then they show the set. And so you instantly get it like, oh, cartoons are real and they're actors in this world. Mm-hmm. And it also shows the book. They have some of that. They talk about like there's a remake of Alice in Wonderland where, Roger Rabbit played like a dog or something like that. Mm-hmm. But it's mostly about comic strips. Like they're shooting comic strips for the newspaper and stuff. So I think that was a good way of, in the movie, putting you into the world of like acting and like fake toon Hollywood quickly.
Yeah. It's one of those things that I'm glad they changed it to being actually about like TV shows and movies, because it definitely would not have had the same impact if we were dealing with like comic strips.
Yeah, and it wouldn't have been like kinetic for,
mm-hmm.
It wouldn't have had any action to it. So it's one of those things that makes more sense.
If they had done the comic strips of Jessica Rabbit, that might have been kinetic.
And then the next thing I noticed is like the opening, like whenever you see people talk about this book, they always, like, even the Wikipedia page says like the movie is loosely based on Who Censored Roger Rabbit, which I think is true, but like the opening like 30 to 40 minutes that set up the mystery is pretty direct parallel. Like, there's obviously changes to make it a movie, but like the Rocco character, who's like kind of like a comic strip executive, he just gets changed to the owner of the Acme brand, basically. Like that's essentially the same character as Rocco, because he ends up being the murder victim. And I thought that was a clever change to like make it a reference to the like Acme brand from cartoons. Like, and it distills two characters in the book, Rocco and Dominic, into one, which also, just makes it a more efficient story.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, I don't know. To me, the biggest difference when I was watching this film that I noticed is that Eddie's motivation for getting involved at all, like his deciding to take this case, feels a lot more selfish, where he's like doing this for the explicit purpose of like breaking up a marriage for money. And it's not like, and the movie does not really frame him as a good guy for doing this job when he gets yelled at by his ex-girlfriend or whatever.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It struck me as a very different way of characterizing Eddie, which is like how he's moving about the world.
Yeah, I think like you said, in the book, it's more obvious, like, how do I want to say this? Eddie does go through the change of heart to, like, sticking his neck out for Roger Rabbit in the book. But I think the book overall is less worried about character development like that. It's more just like, here's a fun mystery in a creative world with, like, jokes. And the movie really distills Eddie's, like, character arc into, like, something very, like, packageable and digestible, I guess.
I feel like it's not an insignificant undercurrent of the book, because I feel like every time, like, once we're past a third of the way through the book, every time that Roger is doing something funny, there's always kind of a mental line by him being like, I hate Toons, but man, Roger sure is funny, or whatever. So it feels like it's kind of this, like, we get to see this tension where he's, like, starting to like this guy, and he doesn't, it's going against his, like, prejudice against Toons.
That's
which
true.
I feel like is a lot more natural than how it is in the book or in the movie. Because in the movie, the reason he doesn't like Toons is because a Toon murdered his brother. And before that, they were, like, in Toontown all the time, solving crimes, having a good laugh. Yeah. So it feels very much like...
It's kind of absurd. Yeah.
It's one of those things where I'm like... I mean, I can imagine a person who has this traumatic experience and them becoming, or acting ignorant because of it. But at the same time, I don't know. I liked it better in the book whenever it was just a matter of, like, this is the society he was grown up in, or he was raised in, so this is how he views the world.
Yeah. And that's one of the points I had is, like, the parallel is less direct, which, yeah. We've already talked about how they give you an obvious antagonist pretty quickly up front with Judge Doom, who, like, is at the scene of the crime in the first scene where they go to the crime scene.
Do you think that
not like at the scene? Yeah.
I think that Judge Doom's name is it has to be a reference to Judge Dredd, right?
Maybe. I don't know. I feel like it's just, like, I honestly can't tell you the logic in calling him that, other than, like, cartoons and comics having, like, crazy, like, Doctor Doom style names.
That's fair. But yeah, it's very obvious, just kind of from the get-go, when he is evil and dips the nice poor shoe into the vat of dip to murder it. Yeah, and you're like, oh,
yeah, it's almost like, it's like, right. And the characters have to go through the motions of solving a mystery, but at that point, the audience, knows exactly what's up. And it's more of an adventure movie, I guess, at that point, as far as a viewer.
I will say this one thing the movie did is it made me feel really bad for all the prop Toons, or all the, like, inanimate object Toons that have, like, eyes that are just boxed up. I just moved around, carted around, and done things. Like, I just felt like aggressively bad for them.
They drop an orchestra set at one point that was supposed to just be in a box, like, getting rounded up, but they all have, like, eyes and mouths. Yeah,
I'm like, okay,
this
gets into the problem of, like, okay, of the Star Wars droid sentience thing, where, like, do they deserve rights because they can feel on things, or should we not think about it that hard?
We can just throw them in the dip, and we won't have to worry about it. I think if they make a new cartoon for a movie, like, you're making Fantasia and you need 80 trumpets to dance in a chorus line, unless you have good work lined up for them, the sensitive thing to do is immediately throw them all in the dip when you're done.
I mean, you have to imagine, do they get paid less? I feel like they get paid less, than Roger Rabbit, right?
They must, and because that's even, like, this is going back to the book, but, like, that's the inciting drama of the book, is that Roger thought he was going to get to be a starring comic strip Toon, but he always has to play second fiddle to Baby Herman. So that must be a less prestigious and less high paying position.
Although in the movie he is just a high paying star.
But, like, in the movie, because it's like golden period of LA. In the movie, that's like one of the major, like, undercurrent themes of the movie. And LA is a union town. Hollywood is a union town. So if you're making 80 trumpets for Fantasia or whatever, then you got to pay them like at least, SAG scale, right? So, or maybe that's the way around it, is if it's not a human, maybe that's why cartoons became a thing.
I really forgot that in the book, Carol Masters' character is all about Toon rights and Toon equality. Completely forgot about that.
Oh, yeah. That's true.
She's much more like, I got to get them the pay they deserve.
Yeah. But maybe, like I was saying, and they never go into, like, do Toons just get created at the moment that, like, a cartoon production needs a Toon that looks like that? Or is there, like, Toon reproduction and, cartoons can only use the Toons that have managed to exist up to this point through Toon
we see that when they're in Toontown, when Eddie gets his head clonked by the door of the car or whatever, and he, like, has 3 eggs that are floating around his head, they pop up into birds or whatever. And I assume that those are just 3 new Toons that just exist now. So it's spontaneous generation.
But maybe those are just 3 bird Toons that are on call for when people hit their head in a funny way.
No, because Toontown is not really a place. It's not like a movie studio. It's just a place where they live. That's just who they are.
True. So,
I mean, that's as close to their natural habitat as we could get there.
So Toons spontaneously come into being when relevant.
Mm-hmm. It's like when Roger says, I could have taken this. He's like, I could have taken this off only whenever it was funny.
Right. The birds disappear, but like Roger Rabbit gets to live in existence free of. Cartoons don't have to be starring in Toons to exist.
Correct. I mean, that's like a major point, is that like their whole city or town or island or whatever is like owned by the Acme Corporation, or owned by Acme. I guess they're not a corporation. And I don't really know exactly, I mean, other than like self-determination reasons, I don't really know the exact reasons as to what they stand to benefit from owning the land itself. Because like, if you don't have any dip, you can't kill the Toons because they're immortal creatures. So like, why are they not in charge of the Earth? Is my question.
Toons would eventually take over the world by this logic. And I'll get off of this soon, but I just still feel like it doesn't answer, like, if you're making Dumbo and you need those pink elephants on parade, is that because you already know some pink elephants from Toontown, so that's you wrote them in, or can you manage to cause pink elephants to exist so that you can shoot Dumbo?
I think it's probably more of a matter of, this is what we want the dance choreography to look like. Let's go hunting in Toontown for some people. I feel like they're not creating them anymore. They're just employing them.
I see. Okay. I'll accept that. And then patty cake and or spontaneous generation creates new Toons.
Well, in the book, it's definitely sex, because they say that only a Toon can have sex with another Toon, which makes the whole question of like what Eddie's supposed to get out of having sex with Jessica Rabbit at all. Like, that apparently it's not supposed to work that way.
Which comes up a lot as like a thing that he is planning on.
Listen, I say this as someone who has no interest in Jessica Rabbit whatsoever. Jessica Rabbit curb stomps Little Bunny every day of the week. Perfect 10 out of 10 woman. No notes.
And do you have a physical copy of the book?
I do.
Okay. Because the back of it, I think the author agrees with you. For those who cannot see it, I think it's easy to look up online, but it's just a picture of the author, Gary Wolfe, in a convertible with Jessica Rabbit as she appears in the movie, drawn right next to him. And the caption is, Gary Wolfe and his Vavavoom mate.
Correct. Listen, sometimes you just nail it out of the park with the character design.
Yeah, he's like, man, when I mentioned there was a cartoon and that she was sexy, I really nailed it.
Listen, she's just drawn that way. You can't blame her.
Yeah. Well, I did know one of the very few lines that is directly from the book and made it to the movie is when Jessica Rabbit says, "I'm not bad. I'm just drawn that way." And they knocked it out of the park on that one. If there was any line in the book that you should have put in the movie, it was that one.
There's another one where Baby Herman's like, this is slightly different from how it is in the book, but he's like, I'm a 50-year-old with a 3-year-old dinky. Yeah, which just brings up like all kinds of icky thoughts.
And a 3-year-old dinky. That one I could have taken or left in the book.
Like, it's one of those things where I'm like, okay, this is kind of show that like the logic of Toons where like they have the mental capacity beyond whatever they are. Like, you know, they're people in and of themselves. They're not just like, they're not just there to serve a specific purpose. They're just people on their own. But at the same time, I'm like, is this the best thing we could have come up with, Gary Wolf?
Yeah.
Did we have to have the chauvinistic baby?
And this is getting into more like movie, like CinemaSins movie logic, but like Baby Herman doesn't age physically, and it frustrates him because he ages mentally. But they specifically mention that the porno that Jessica Rabbit shoots, she looked like younger in it. And so she ages.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe only the female Toons age, because once they get old enough, they're no longer worth anything.
But then they could just stay, like, if the issue is, like, Toon society is sexist, then the female Toons could just stay at, like, whatever age Toon society deems as attractive.
Maybe each individual Toon has an individual age that they grow up to, and they stop there. And Jessica Rabbit lucked out, so she'd become, like, 21 and drink alcohol.
Or maybe, actually, you know what it is? Maybe it's a humanoid Toon. Well, no, Baby Herman's a humanoid. He's just a baby. Maybe it's because it's in his name. Like, that's...
Well, I mean, like, yeah. Wait, okay, so do you think that he... Okay, now we're getting into Toons. Is he Baby Herman? Is he a baby because he's Baby Herman, or is he Baby Herman because he's a baby?
This isn't Toons, Cameron. This is philosophy.
I know. It's just, I'm curious.
And I don't.
What is Jessica Rabbit's maiden name? Because she's married to Roger Rabbit, but they only refer to her as Jessica Rabbit. They never mention... I imagine that her name when she was created was Jessica Rabbit, and she just kind of lucked out with who she married.
Yeah.
Oh, that's another big difference in the book, in the movie, is that in this movie, she actually likes him.
Yeah. I do have that somewhere. I think I like that change because it's a lot funnier that it's just an earnest relationship between a rabbit and, like, this woman.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely like it, and it's the kind of thing that I was, like, most shocked about when I was reading the book, because I have such a distinct memory of this movie and their relationship, that when I was reading the book, and she's all like, oh, I don't love him at all, I was like, okay, there's something amiss here. And I was kind of very sympathetic to, like, Roger Rabbit's point of view in the book, where he was like, something is pressuring her to do this or whatever. I was like, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's not true at all.
And to be clear, for people who haven't read it, the book has a hard focus on why these two were married, and, like, the fact that Jessica Rabbit, it's like a marriage of convenience or for political reasons, and getting to the bottom of that is, like, part of the mystery of the book, unlike in the movie where they are just two Toons in love.
Yeah, it is always funny when Eddie gets cucked by the rabbit at the very end.
And kind of sticking with the theme of strange joke lines or one-liners about being a cartoon, when they go to, like, probate court to investigate, and then Roger Rabbit's like, my Uncle Thumper had a problem with his probate. I thought that line was funny, but B, I just thought it was, like, a line that I can't even fathom Disney letting through these days, since it, like, directly references a Bambi character's prostate.
This movie could never be made, I think, until the fall of capitalism.
And, well, anymore. I mean, it was made in 88.
Well,
but
I've always heard this. I never actually verified to check, but, like, they only got permission to use their cartoon characters from Warner Brothers and Disney on the explicit permission that everyone got the same screen time. So basically, every time you see one character, you see the other character's, like, counterpart. Yeah. Like, okay, they're both in the same scene at the same time.
Yeah, I was reading about that after watching it today, and yeah, it's made by Touchstone, which, to be clear, is Disney. It was just what they called movies that were, like, for adults instead of kids. But yeah, they would have had to bring Warner Brothers on board, which apparently it was Steven Spielberg who had the clout to do that. But they like supposedly you can even like count the words, and like Mickey and Bugs speak the same number of words and like appear the same amount down to the frame.
Well, I'm glad it all worked out.
And I will say, Bugs Bunny comes off looking a lot more energetic and funnier than Mickey Mouse does. Like,
yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where I think
interesting character.
I don't know, like the kind of comedy that they have set up in this film, I feel like lends itself more to the Looney Tunes-esque kind of thing than like Disney's Mickey Mouse.
Just pure slapstick. And that's really what it's more like. Roger Rabbit is obviously like, what if Bugs Bunny did a noir investigation? Like, that's obviously the concept of the book. And I also think it's just that weird thing where like they've kind of fixed it within the last decade or so, but like there were decades of time where like Disney's treatment of Mickey Mouse was just like corporate mascot that can't have a personality in case he offends someone. Mm-hmm. And they were in peak that era in like 1988. So
brand integrity, don't we love it?
I thought baiting Roger Rabbit out by playing Shaving a Haircut, which he can't resist saying 2 bits to, was funny.
Mm-hmm. That movie,
that
scene never made sense to me as a child because I didn't understand what Shaving a Haircut was. So now that I'm old enough to understand what it is, it makes sense.
They would have got me.
I was like, I think one of the things I noticed most about this movie is like it's very good at doing setup and payoff. Like pretty much everything set up at the beginning or throughout comes back later at one point, whether it's like the weasel's laughing to death, like that's set up throughout the entire film. You know, Roger's effect when he drinks alcohol, like that's set up and then pays off later when he's saved from the dip by it.
Yeah, it's very classic screenwriting. Like, it's just a satisfying thing to watch. And he didn't write it, but it's directed by Robert Zemeckis, who did Back to the Future, which I feel like is another example of just like very pure, like almost perfect screenwriting in that sense. So it makes sense that he would direct 2 movies that share that.
That are perfect and good, and there's no flaws whatsoever.
Yeah. Yes, exactly what I said. One qualm I have with the book is I do think it gets a little walking from one room to the other, having a conversation, and then like walking to the next room and having a conversation. It's almost a little long for what it is, even though it's not that long of a book.
Well, it's one of those things where like Eddie's character in the movie can kind of move around and do things, whereas I think he kind of explicitly says it this way where he's talking to Roger's doppel. He's like, you know, my kind of line of work is not very action packed. If you want to do that, you got to stick to the comics or whatever. So it's almost like refusing to even do any kind of action because that's like against noir.
Yeah. But I bring that up to say I think adding the car chase roughly in the middle of the movie was a very good idea because it wouldn't have made much sense in a book. Like, it would not have been very exciting to read, but it's a smart thing to add when you have visuals on your side.
This is kind of not relevant to anything. It just kind of came up to my mind again as I was watching it. I have this distinct memory of whenever Eddie goes to Toontown in the movie, that as he's driving through the thing, a train comes at him and he has to back out of it. And that's not in the movie. I don't know where I got that from.
Yeah, there's like a close call with a train at some point, but not then, right?
I know. I think the only time I recall a train is whenever
Are we mass hallucinating train accidents?
I swear, I think there was like at the very end when they push it into the wall through Toontown with the machine that doesn't work anymore, it gets hit by a train, which is what solves that issue. But I swear there was a moment where like he's driving somewhere and he has to back up because the train's coming at him. And I don't know if that's like a unreleased cut, like if I hallucinated that or if I've realm shifted to a different universe, but something's happened.
Yeah. And same concept it's good that the finale is they solve the mystery for the audience like immediately, and they solve it in the movie with like the whole third act left to go. And I think that's good because it gives them the ability to make the third act the like slapstick extravaganza in the warehouse, which I think is a good call because it completes the whole like throwback to slapstick cartoons and everything.
And it kind of helps, finish up Eddie's arc where he has to kind of embrace his love for toon humor again because he had that and then his brother died and he didn't have that.
Yeah, and he like becomes the slapstick protagonist by like putting on the show that causes the weasels to laugh to death and everything.
So you had never seen this movie as a child?
I had seen bits and pieces of it from probably when I was in like my tweens up to now. And I had maybe seen it all the way through like once when I was in like high school, but I didn't really have a great memory of it.
I'm just like, I was distinctly scarred by watching Judge Doom get run over by a steamroller and then pop out and then blow himself up and then his eyes pop out of his head. So like that was a very fundamental childhood scarring memory for me.
I'd seen The Naked Gun where they run that guy over with like a marching band and a steamroller and a parade, enough to steel me against such things.
Yeah, he had the creepy red eyes and he blew himself up. I've always wanted to put my mouth on one of those things, but apparently it'll kill me or something.
I did think it was interesting because I feel like this is a subtle, but I think it shows that they were still using the structure of the novel when they were writing the screenplay. Because the villain is still ultimately a character that you think is a human, but is really a toon, which is, again, like what we said, happens in the book.
Yeah. But I think in the book, it's a lot more sympathetic of a person, whereas in this one, just unredeemable who wants to build a freeway and destroy Toontown.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was interesting, the freeway motivation, because it is very like the movie is kind of like saying like, this is like the golden period of Hollywood, like the studio system of the 40s and the cartoons. And obviously there were problems with that we don't have to get into, but it is interesting because this theme is completely added compared to the book. Like it's not in the book. But I think it's appropriate because bringing in these like famous cartoons, it is kind of like a celebration of movie history that is bringing together all these mascots to be in this movie together and the 40s Hollywood setting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I said it kind of has like Wreck-It Ralph.
I don't know. I just like
where like all.
I mean, it's got like Dr. Doofenshmirtz energy, I guess, as well, where it's like I'm gonna ruin this thing in like the most unfun way
villainous
possible.
way possible. Yeah. But yeah, I think that. Oh, the only other note that I didn't get to is that at one point in the bathroom, there's some graffiti in the background that says, "For a good time, call Allison Wonderland," which I just noticed and thought was funny.
See, the only thing that I noticed in the background was when Eddie first goes back to his apartment, he puts his hat on what's a falcon, and I didn't know if it was supposed to be a reference to the Maltese falcon of like Sherlock Holmes lore, right? That's Sherlock Holmes, right?
The Maltese Falcon is a movie, a noir movie. I don't know anything about it being related to Sherlock Holmes, but I don't know that much about Sherlock Holmes or that movie. So,
well, I knew the Maltese Falcon was some kind of mystery thing, so I was trying to figure out if that was supposed to be a reference. It's based on a book by Dashiell Hammett, so no, it's not a Sherlock Holmes thing. Apparently, it's only told in external third-person narrative, which is interesting.
I did learn again in my after movie research that the author made a sequel novel called Who Plugged Roger Rabbit.
Well, he made like several like other ones that are in the same universe in the sense that like they all involve Roger Rabbit or something.
Right. Which, if you read the book, doesn't make a lot of sense because Roger Rabbit is dead as a doornail. But apparently it's like that situation where he just like retconned the entire first novel, and the movie is more canon to the book than the first book is. Which is kind of funny because the same thing happened to Forrest Gump, another movie directed by Robert Zemeckis. So
what's he got
Robert
cooking?
Zemeckis just has the
he has got
he
the
has
sauce.
the
He
curse
can do
where
it.
his movies will just
He'll convince the
completely
author.
overtake your book. Yeah. I'm ready for ratings if you are, but
Okay,
up to you.
we can do ratings. This is, I think, a
So-
difficult one in terms of deciding what I want to rate it.
Yeah. I think in terms of adaptational difficulty, like what video game would we assign the book for how hard it is to adapt? I'm going to go Mario, because I don't think the plot of the novel, even though it's a competent, entertaining novel, then I don't think you could just like write the screenplay one for one and throw it up on screen and have something particularly watchable. I think it's such a weird world to have to introduce. And in addition, you're doing the noir parody and the Toon parody. Like, there's so many elements to consider, to throw in, that I just think it would be a tough challenge to write the screenplay and to direct the movie in a way that ends up entertaining while retaining any of the soul or of the original. I don't think it's like, it's not Ulysses, so it's not the hardest thing in the world to adapt, but I think it would be tough.
Yeah, I kind of stand on a similar thing where I think that there's parts that you definitely have to change. Like, you can't do the speech bubbles and stuff like that in a convenient way that I think any audience, especially nowadays, would appreciate or see things other than like super gimmicky. Not that it necessarily would be gimmicky, but it stands to me that like you have to sit down and think, okay, I can't take everything from this book. So what am I taking? What are the most essential elements? Like, I mean, they drop like whole characters and whole like, undercurrents from the book to the movie because it just doesn't fit.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a very important character in the book who we only briefly mentioned, Carol Masters, who is like, again, she's sort of like the Toon rights voice, the equality, the like liberal voice of the book. And she's also a photographer for the comic strips. But if anything, she is semi-replaced by Dolores in the movie, but even that's not a very close.
Well, I mean, Dolores doesn't have much of a personality.
All, so. Yeah. And Carol does, so.
I think so now we're moving on to whether or not it, it completes it, beats it or whatever. I mean, I almost want to say that like this completes it because like, yeah, it's a wild difference or kind of a deviated difference, but like it's as close. It's like it's the movie equivalent of the book, if that makes sense, where like it does everything what it should do for the movie, in honor to be like, what works in a book does not always work in a movie, and what they've done is they've changed that to be what works best in the movie, which is the Toontown, it being that they're actors in a TV show / movie, a lot of visual animations and stuff like that. Like that's the kind of thing that works in a movie that doesn't work in a book. Whereas he has like the thought bubbles and everything, and the speech bubbles that work in the book but don't necessarily work in a movie.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. That's pretty much what I would say. I think it, as a movie, obviously it's a very good movie, and it captures and I don't think it's just like it's such a difference, but I think it still gets at a lot of the heart of the themes that the book has and the tone of the book. Like, the book is recognizable as a similar product to the movie, just in its own medium. So, which is to say, it's not like, last episode where we assigned the Green Knight, like, Kaizo ROM hack. Like, it's not like the movie is this self-conscious, deliberate challenging of the book's narrative. It's just the logical quality way to turn what the book is into a movie. So I think it completes it in that sense.
I mean, that makes sense to me.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we've wrapped another one up then, unless you have any stray thoughts.
No, I don't think so. I think we covered up all the important elements.
Okay. So, just the end of the episode housekeeping like usual. We are releasing episodes on the 4th Friday of every month. So that means next month you're going to see our episode on April 25th. And we will be covering The Princess Bride, the novel and the movie. Well, that doesn't bear saying based on the podcast that we're recording, but The Princess Bride for April.
I think it bears saying. We get to decide what's worth saying, Josh. That's all, folks. Somewhat relevant to the movie. As always, we'd like to give credit to those that made this podcast possible, those that worked on the adaptation. A great big thanks for making the world just a little bit more artful. And as always, to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Join us next time for some inconceivable wonders in The Princess Bride.